You've spent so long pretending you're fine that even you stopped believing the truth about your own pain. And as you hear this, a part of you finally exhales because someone is finally naming what your mind has been whispering for years. You've been carrying the weight of unspoken fear, quiet resentment, and the subtle ache of being misunderstood. You've walked through moments that left you doubting your worth, doubting your voice, doubting your very sense of direction, because someone taught you, slowly, quietly, that your feelings were negotiable, that your needs were optional, that your loyalty mattered more than your dignity. And you believed it, not because you were weak, but because you cared so deeply that you ignored your own alarms. That is where dark psychology lives, not in the shadows of villains, but in the subtle cracks within human behavior where manipulation doesn't look like manipulation, where emotional abuse feels like love, where toxic relationships disguise their poison inside promises, apologies, and moments of warmth. You know this feeling, the confusion, the guilt, the way you question yourself after every argument, the way you replay every conversation, wondering if you misunderstood, if you overreacted, if maybe you were the problem. You weren't, you were conditioned. People who use manipulation rarely start with cruelty. They start with connection. They start with attention that feels rare, validation that feels intoxicating, and interest that feels almost unreal. And once you're emotionally open, once you feel seen, once you let your guard down, control begins, not suddenly, not violently, but gradually, through silence, through disappointment, through subtle withdrawal that makes you chase their approval, through blame that makes you apologize for things that weren't your fault. That's how trauma bonding forms. A cycle of emotional highs and lows that wires your mind to crave the exact person who's hurting you. It's not weakness, it's conditioning, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Dark psychology isn't about clever tricks. It's about emotional reinforcement. It's about the way guilt shapes your decisions, the way fear keeps you silent, the way shame convinces you that you deserve less than you actually do, and the way attachment keeps you returning to places where your heart isn't safe. You learned to shrink yourself so someone else could feel bigger. You learned to walk gently so someone else wouldn't explode. You learned to read tone, silence, pauses, and moods like your survival depended on it. And in a way, it did. But here is the truth you've avoided. People who manipulate you don't do it because you lack intelligence. They do it because you have empathy, because you feel deeply, because you were raised to care, to give, to forgive. They saw your softness not as something to protect, but something to use. Yet even as they controlled your emotions, something inside you resisted. A quiet awareness, a small voice that kept telling you something was wrong. That voice never left you. It's the part of you that's listening right now, the part of you that's tired of being controlled, tired of being guilted, tired of being told who you're allowed to be. Machiavellian power isn't about cruelty, it's about awareness. It's the ability to understand motives without being blinded by them, to recognize mind games without falling into them, to see emotional manipulation without rationalizing it. When people withdraw affection to make you chase them, you feel it now. When they twist your words to protect their ego, you recognize it. When they make you question your memory, your reality, or your intentions, you no longer blame yourself. You're learning the invisible patterns, the red flags you used to overlook, the guilt that was never yours to carry. The first shift happens when you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. The second shift happens when you stop chasing closure from people who benefit from your confusion. The third shift happens when you realize that not everyone you lose is a loss. Some people leave your life like poison leaving your bloodstream. Slowly, painfully, necessarily, your self-worth was never supposed to be negotiated. You were never meant to beg for the bare minimum. You were never meant to shrink so someone else could feel powerful. What feels like weakness inside you is actually sensitivity. What feels like confusion is your intuition asking you to listen. What feels like fear is your mind remembering the moments where love became conditional. And yet, even now, even with everything you've been through, you still have the capacity to rebuild, to reclaim your boundaries, to protect your emotions, to rise from the damage without becoming the same as the people who hurt you. Dark intelligence is not the ability to harm. It's the ability to understand harm so deeply that you never allow it to control you again. It's the inner strength that grows when you finally see patterns for what they are, when you stop trying to save people who enjoy watching you suffer, when you stop mistaking intensity for intimacy, when you stop letting silence punish you. Every moment of doubt you felt was a sign that you deserved better. Every apology you gave just to keep the peace was proof of how deep your loyalty runs. Every time you stayed quiet to avoid conflict, you were protecting someone who wouldn't have protected you. But now you're learning to protect yourself, slowly, quietly, powerfully. You don't reclaim your life all at once. You reclaim it in small decisions, in tiny acts of courage, in choosing not to respond to manipulation, in choosing to walk away from guilt, in choosing to speak even when your voice shakes, in choosing to let people be disappointed when you finally set boundaries, in choosing to let people leave when they no longer benefit from your silence. And as you step into this new version of yourself, something changes. The people who once controlled you lose their hold. The guilt they used to trigger no longer lands. The fear they relied on no longer works. The shame they fed off no longer defines you. You become clearer, calmer, harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, harder to control. That is dark intelligence, not coldness, but clarity, not cruelty, but self-respect, not manipulation, but mastery over your own mind. You are not becoming someone new. You are returning to the person you were before someone convinced you to doubt your own reflection. You are stepping back into your strength. You are taking ownership of your emotions. You are choosing truth over fear. And in that process, the world will begin to treat you differently, not because you changed your heart, but because you finally changed your boundaries. Remember this: you deserve love that doesn't demand your silence. You deserve connection that doesn't punish you. You deserve relationships that don't ask you to bleed just so someone else can feel whole. You deserve peace that doesn't crumble every time someone else feels threatened by your growth. And you deserve to rise without permission. So take a breath. Let this moment settle inside your chest. Let your mind feel the weight of everything you've survived, and let this truth echo in the quiet space within you. You were never weak, only waiting to remember your power. And when this ends, don't rush to fill the silence. Sit with it. Feel it. Because healing begins in the spaces where you finally hear yourself again.